Hello, guys. Robert Wilkinson here, and welcome to another episode here on my channel. Okay, today I'm going to talk about the George Floyd issue and the resulting riots and Black Lives Matter. In this organization, as I'm trying to wrap my mind about what it is they're actually after, what is their chief aim. And I probably won't discuss that today. Actually, what I want to get into is some of the meat and bones of what we've been experiencing on the planet today. So today, I live in London, or just outside of London. I work in an area called Greater London, and London sometimes is less than 20 minutes away from me, depending on where I am and what I'm doing. Now, central London, that is. I want to know what it is people are thinking, what logic are they employing to do the thing that they're doing. Black Lives Matter is in operating in London, and they're disturbing a society that has its issues with race, which is constantly dealing with its issues with race, and for some reason it's is boiled over to this. Let me just bring up this particular set of things which happened this previous Sunday. Today being June the 11th. I will be posting this later today. But as you can see, that the British police are having to deal with this. I'm struggling to understand the purpose of Black Lives Matter in the United Kingdom. Um, the fact is that on the streets of London, black youth are knifing black youth, and black youth are dying at the hands of other youth. That black men are dying at the hands of other black men, not at the hands of the police. Now, I'm no fan of the police. I'm no fan of many police forces, and let that be known to you. I don't have a problem with saying that I am not a big fan of the police. I do not advocate for the police. I don't think that they do much in the way of providing me with any particular service. But they have a place in society, the necessary part of what it is that the security, that aspect, that safety feature in especially in British society, and I would say most Western societies, that the police serve very useful aims. Now, all of this came about due to this police officer, this thug, this incompetent police officer, goes by the name of Derek Chauvin. And Mr. Chauvin was known to George Floyd, and Mr. Chauvin held his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for a total of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I've been told. This man, who misserved the people of Minneapolis, had 18 prior complaints against him. 18 prior complaints. It's a heck of a lot. Um, two, Only two of the 18 complaints were closed with discipline. So that means the 18 times he was pulled up by members of the public, and I can pretty much guarantee you that you can maybe double or triple that number of individuals who probably could have lodged complaints against them and should have lodged complaints against them. I struggle to know how such an incompetent officer was allowed to operate on the streets of Minneapolis. So there is clearly a failure of his superiors and maybe a failing of the system. You know, that blue thin line is not that thin. It is quite broad, and it's almost a wall. Now, I consider Mr. Chauvin, I called him Mr. again, please do forgive me, Mr. Chauvin. Mr. Chauvin must not be uttered from my lips. This man, Derek Chauvin, seemed to be no more than an incompetent thug of a policeman. Plain and simple, he made bad decisions, his horrible choices, and that choice that he decided to take with George Floyd, it was too much. So it was a horrible, shitty thing for him to become or to decide that he was going to be judge, jury, and executioner. That is not the role of a police officer. That is not the role of a police officer. Plain and simple. So what he did was a criminal act. He committed an egregious crime against Mr. Floyd. Now, one of the sad things about this is that I really shouldn't be calling George Floyd Mr., because he doesn't have much room for maneuver. As I try to wrap my mind around some of this, and come to some sensible understanding of what's going on, it has dawned on me that it doesn't merit much more brain power to be employed on my part. Because surely those in Black Lives Matter have used very little logic to achieve any understanding of what they're getting themselves involved with. As George Floyd, as it turns out, seemed to be just as thuggish and as unruly as Derek Chauvin. I mean, is it that Mr. Chauvin, if he had met Mr. Floyd one-on-one on the streets, remember they did have a previous relationship, having worked at the same bar or nightclub, one would say that there would have just been two creeps, two violent men who met on the streets and had an altercation. But as it turns out, Chauvin was a cop, had the upper hand because he had his gang with him, and George Floyd did not have his gang with him. At least they were nowhere to be seen when this came undone. Now, as we look at some of the shenanigans that George Floyd got up to, it turns out that he had numerous convictions for assault. He had robbery charges, armed robbery. He had served time. There's a report that was released in, Great Game India. The other reports came from CNN and another source. I'm just trying to get to this. George Floyd's criminal past. He was under the influence of fentanyl and methamphetamine at the time of arrest. We know that. On that day of his death, on May 25th, he was arrested for passing a counterfeit $20 note at a grocery store in Minneapolis. No man deserves to be killed over 20 pounds. No man deserves to be killed, actually, plain and simple. Because Black Lives Matter. 2, Black lives also matter. Which means white lives matter. Which means Asian lives matter. Brown lives matter. Yellow lives matter. Red lives matter. All lives matter. He was under the influence of fentanyl and methamphetamine at the time of arrest. Is this the hallmark of a man who's leading an exemplary life? I don't think so. He has more than a decade-old criminal history at the time of the arrest and went to jail at least 5 times. He was the ringleader of a violent home invasion. He pled guilty to entering a woman's home, pointing a gun at her stomach, and searching the home for drugs and money, according to court records. This guy, yeah? Rioting for this guy. Rioting, looting, protesting for police injustice against this guy. Again, his death was not warranted. That part I fully understand. But surely there are other people who have perished at the hands of violent policemen, incompetent, thuggish policemen. There are others who would have deserved and merited this, but not this guy. Detach George Floyd's name from your protest. because this is they're not in defense of him, because he was not a man who led the life of one who was absolutely innocent. He was a miscreant, and he's being treated as if he is a saint. Now, my biggest question for the Black Lives Matter individuals and all the protesters is, well, what is your standard? How low is your standard? Is my standard too high? I will protest. I have told others that at the age that I am currently at, I probably have 1 or 2 protests left in me. But I, for one, would not be caught out. I would not be found protesting for a man who was as devious as this. So 2 devious men met in the streets of Minneapolis, one with his gang, the other without. And it ended badly for the one who was without. I'm not being cruel, and I'm not being harsh. I'm being logical. So I have no emotion. I have no tie to this. There's nothing that I consider to be worth destroying my society, nor the lives of strangers and people that I call neighbor. That I don't see the point of that. My expectations are high. My standards are fairly high for humanity. I abhor senseless violence. I am a black man, but I'm also an individual who gets to decide what is important. And I will say without hesitation that all lives matter, because all lives are important. It's simple logic. My children's lives matter. My wife's life matters. My sister's lives matter. My pastors, my grocers, my banker, my butcher, my shoemaker, the woman who works at the laundrette, the boy who works at the auto mechanic shop. All these people's lives, they matter. So what are you all doing for a man who was no more than a thuggish, low-life criminal? What are you doing? Now, there's a place for defending oneself. There's a place for it. But this is not a defense. It is nothing of the sort. I hear young men complaining in England about being not wanting to be killed by the police. The fact is, they're being killed in the streets by the people who live next door, or in another postcode, a postcode across the street. They're being knifed. There were 3 people killed in the United Kingdom last year, in 2019. 3 people. And 2 of them were in the act of terrorist activities. They were armed. They were both careless and fearless. And so the police took them out. And the other individual, I don't have much details on them, but 3 people. 2 low-standard humans met. 2 thugs, one with a gang, one without. My expectations are high. What are yours? All of you protesters, all of you chasing after Black Lives Matter, pretending that you're carrying out justice. You devalue so many advances in the human rights, civil rights, people's rights movements. Devalued it, thrown it away. I'm a man who followed and understood, read. They were dead before I was born, but Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he died, actually the year I was born, he was assassinated. Brother Malcolm X, another man at the forefront, man of substance. Who's leading the Black Lives Matter organization? Who are they? Show me the substance. Show me the faces. Show me the mission statement. If you don't know who you're following, why are you following them? If you don't know what this is actually all about, why are you about it? So as I said, Mr. Floyd didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve to be assassinated. He didn't deserve to be killed like that. That was unjust. But he's just not the type of man that I would call a martyr. He is not a martyr. He was no more than a lowlife, people hating, woman terrorizing, threatening, punkish creep. He was not a martyr. Chauvin was another punkish, lowlife, people terrorizing creep. They met on the streets, one with a gang, one without.